Good afternoon. So my exercise machine has arrived, which I'm really happy about. Like they said, it's going to arrive between like 25 and 26th of February, 25th and 26th of February, and it's already here. I've been going out like a lot to kind of like walk and exercise, so I'll be able to do this from home, which is pretty good. I am working my novel, and that has been I think things are just flowing for me, which is exactly what I wanted. So I'm really happy that even another day where I'm like working on my novel, it's something that I've talked about it before. It gives me joy. I feel very accomplished. Feel very you know yeah, I feel very like I'm doing something, I'm just kind of like achieving something. So yeah, but what I wanted to talk about today, I want to talk about two things. So the first one is that, I kind of like realized that accommodating for people, like that is a weakness, like that is not losing, which is something that for the longest time I struggled with. I really wanted to have the last word, and I really wanted, it was like my way or the highway. So the fact that now I can kind of like do things to accommodate people, and I don't feel like a failure, like that is, I've come a long way. I'm not saying that like I'm just letting myself be thrown around or anything, but like sometimes existing, it's kind of like it's a two-way street, interacting with people. So like yeah, so I don't know what else to say. It's just that I kind of like realized this yesterday. We had the cell group with my parents, my like my mom's friend, and one of my dad's co-workers kind of like stopped by too. She was also, I mean, like, it was online, so she didn't come here or anything, but it was interesting because like the thing that was being said, it just some things that were kind of like mentioned, I kind of like made me reflect on my life. So for example, this friend of my mom, she was talking about how like the thing about forgiveness, which is hard, and that she only does it because Jesus said that she had to do that, because otherwise she would just hold on to grudges and all that. And I don't really have Jesus in my life, but I have been able to notice that I've been able to forgive, and it's something that took me many years. So I mentioned this before. When I was 13, I had an essay situation, and it just really traumatized me. Like it really changed. I changed completely, and for so long, like I harbored this very intense feelings of like wanting revenge, wanting to kind of like find this person and do something to them. And what I realized when we are talking about forgiveness, because that was always like the biggest thing that I had to forgive, that I had never really been able to do before, I realized that like, oh, this has happened. I have forgiven this person. I'll never forget, like those situations, like those events, they're kind of like carved in my mind, and I'll always remember them. But at least like right now I'm kind of like healed, so like I can live my life, I can trust people, I can interact with people, I can kind of like, I was talking about accommodating individuals. And like because for a long time, like because of that, religion was also like really tricky for me, because I felt like I was betrayed, and I felt like it was kind of like in with everybody, because I feel like I should have been protected at that age, and I was not. So there were like a lot of like different feelings that came from like that situation. But like I think that the most important thing for me right now is that I can live my life free from the chains that situation kind of like, I was kind of like shackled for the longest time. So yeah, yesterday I was kind of like, okay, I've been able to forgive this person, not for them, but for me. I know it's a cliche saying that you have to forgive, like for yourself, but it is very true. Because when I wasn't really forgiven, I was kind of like tied up to all those thoughts. Like I was the only one who was hurting, because I was hurting because of what had happened, and the memories were very painful. And as I said, like everything that changed in my life as a consequence was also very it's kind of scary, like, and I talked about this before, that I didn't might need the urge I felt like to be strong, and to like have no fear, and to be kind of like being controlled, being charged. And I mean, all these things, like they were already there, but like this situation really intensified them. So yeah, so I can definitely say right now that I have been able to forgive this person, because I've been able to put this in the past. And yeah, like I'm just living my life, thinking about the future, and enjoying the present. The past is important, like we learn things from the past, and I'm not saying they should ignore it, but I think I lived in the past for too long, and I'm kind of like just really ready to kind of like keep going with my life. And that is exactly what is happening. So like it fills me with joy to know that like I made this much progress. Because like if you asked me like 5 years ago for be able to forgive this person, I would tell you that I thought I was going to my grave with like all that anger and that desire. Because this is also a thing, because I told my parents this yesterday, and they were mentioning that like I wasn't seeking retribution. And I think the reason why I didn't directly do that is because first of all, like the first few years after that happened, my brain kind of like shut down that memory, so it's like almost I had like amnesia. And I mean, I think you could call it amnesia. But yeah, so they were kind of like saying that. And the thing is like, how exactly do I reach this person? This is a person that I met in that camp and in that event, and then never saw that person again. I mean, I did see him like in 1 week after, but then after something just disappeared. So like I have a name and I remember like the face. It's interesting because for so long I didn't remember like the whole face. All that I saw was like the mouth and this kind of like smirk, this smile that just like got me nauseous. But like, so if I saw this person again, I would probably recognize them. But yeah, but like how exactly do you go about that? And also like the first time I talked about this, it was like almost a decade after that. So how exactly do you go about finding this individual? As I said, I only remember this person's name, and it was a rather common name, so it's kind of like hard to remember it. But the point is that I kind of like realized that directly there was like no hope for me to just have any type of compensation. But I think that I'm projecting those feelings into other situations. So, for example, moments where like there was a lot of like aggression in my attitude and like the way that I approach the world and I interact with people, I realize now that like, oh, I was angry. It's kind of like these individuals, they remind me in some way or another of like that person, what they said would do, or like interacting with them like generated certain feelings. And so like I projected onto other people. Thankfully I've always had people in my life to kind of like hold me back and preventing me from making a huge mistake, something that I cannot come back from. But like right now I look back and I'm like, oh yeah, so that is kind of what was happening. Like I was very like things were good. Well, things were not good, but like it felt good to be aggressive and like almost violent at times. And I think that was also my trauma talking. So it is interesting for me to just be able to look back and be like, yeah, I still have some tendencies, and particularly when I'm manic, there's still like a lot of aggression. But when I'm like normal, I think that I'm a much chiller person. And I think I talked about this the other day, like how I feel like one of like the traits that I kind of like could describe myself with, like I think could be chill. I think I'm finally at that point, and this is kind of like translating to like every facet of my life. So there's some small things, some big things. Like I'm just happy with where I am at. And it feels like I'm no longer wasting my life, wasting the sense that because I was so stuck in that trauma, I couldn't really progress with like whatever I was doing. So like right now I'm finally free. I can just live my life and enjoy myself in a way that it's not really, things are not I'm not compensating for anything, I'm not projecting, I'm not rationalizing things. I'm just like processing things as they come and letting them go and moving on with my life, with my day. But yeah, so I don't know, it may not seem like a lot. I mean, it is a lot, to be able to forgive somebody who hurt you so badly. But like it took me. It's interesting because not like I forgave him yesterday. It's just that I realized that like I've been able to like go. That I'm just focused on my life and what can be and not what was. Because as I mentioned, I kind of like lost almost like a decade of my life. Even before I kind of like remembered and everything. Like I was kind of stuck. Like I couldn't, things just didn't flow. Like the thing I mentioned, that's kind of like happening today. I was like just they're flowing, they're just happening. It felt like that there was a barrier, because there was a barrier, an emotional barrier, psychological barrier that was kind of like preventing me from just living my life and living in the present. Because like you can live your life in many ways. So like being stuck in the past is also a way to live. It's not what I wanted for myself. And so yeah, so once I want to live my life, I want the present and the future to be more important than the past. Naturally, like you always want to learn from your mistakes and all that, but not what I'm talking about. But yeah, so I think in this context, the whole thing of like accommodating people, it is something that like I can finally do because I no longer have like the urge to be and to be perceived as strong. It's interesting because like when I compare it to the trauma, like I think that one of the reasons that like being something sometimes is not enough is because if somebody's going to do something against you, something to you, uh, like if they perceive you, for example, as being a strong person, they're going to like think twice about doing it. So it's not just about you being strong, because being strong means that you'll be able to go through it. But like if people perceive you as being strong, then you're less likely to have to go through anything. So I think that is why I think a part of me is always concerned with like not just being something but being perceived as something, because ultimately like not being is not, it's not that being is as important as appearing to be, but like in the way that, as I said, I was hurt, so I was in defensive mode this whole time. So I wanted to be perceived as that, so I couldn't be hurt physically, but also like emotionally and all that. So there's that, something I've been kind of like observing, which it does explain, because as I said, I talked about this before, like why do I feel the urge of like being perceived as something? Why do I care that people see me as anything? And now I'm like, oh, okay, it's because of that, like the trauma that happened, and my head just made this kind of like this took this decision that like I'm going to be strong, and I'm going to be perceived as strong, so that I won't be vulnerable again. I won't be kind of like put in this situation that I can't shake off. But yeah, so the whole thing of like accommodating people, because as I said, my brain saw that as being weak, so I was kind of stuck in this vicious cycle, where whenever like I demonstrated anything that my brain perceived as weakness, I started to kind of like spiral, and then I would become harsher. So like I would double down on whatever I was doing before, and yeah, so basically my situation just got worse. So I was pushing more, as I said, people away, and I was isolating myself more. I was kind of like stuck in my brain, in my mind, in my fantasies, because like in these fantasies, I was I could be whoever the fuck I want, and that involved like a person who is not going to get hurt. It's kind of like interesting, because I think 5 years ago I would struggle to admit that like I don't want to be hurt, because I wanted to like not care so hard that like it didn't even matter. But the thing is like I do care, and things do affect me. Things, they hurt me, they wound me, and denying them doesn't really fix anything. But I tried really hard to try and make it work. So yeah, but it took me many years, but I'm finally here, and I can say that like helping people, accommodating for people, like that's not weakness. That is I know it's part of life. I'm not saying that it's like a strength or anything, but like like I want to interact more with people, for example, right now, and like I'm in a new stage of my life. I'm gonna start a new, like major in a new college. So I have the opportunity of like meeting people and getting close to people, and I don't know. I think I'm finally ready to commit, because when I think about second half of 2022, when I started, like the current major that I'm on, I started off by kind of like making some friends, but then I kind of like just disappeared. I do that a lot, actually. Like I kind of like just leave situations and yeah, people behind. And the thing is, like, it's not particularly hard because I never really connecting. And I think that 2022, like, that was definitely the case, because in the second half of 2022 was when I started this new, like, I started this new college, this new major, and it's also when I started therapy specifically for this trauma that I have. So basically, I kind of like, I was going through changes, but I was still not there yet. So, I think that I wasn't ready to commit to anything. I did have, it's interesting to say, because I think I have like an issue with commitment, which I know sounds ironic. Whenever I say this, people look at my tattoos and they're like, what do you mean? You're afraid of commitment? And this is something that I was like borderline proud of when I was younger. That was just very weird situations. Like, yeah, I don't, commit. I'm just myself. It's all about me. And but then like I also realized like, oh yeah, the commitment has to do with trauma, because like when you commit, you are vulnerable, and you end up like bringing somebody else, because also I got used to just being everything about myself, so like having to do something for somebody else, like it was weird and uncomfortable. So yeah, there was the aspect of like you having to be vulnerable for to get close to somebody, and I was not ready to be vulnerable with anyone. And also there's like the fact that I don't know, but yeah, there was this, yeah, I got used to being kind of like selfish in a way. So, it was kind of like hard for me to just leave that mindset. Because also, like, I didn't, I think the people that I met also, like, if they had been fucking incredible, I probably would have wanted them more in my life. But, that I don't know, like, I don't think, maybe I'm just creating this expectation in my head that, I'm going to find somebody amazing, and that person, because like if that person is amazing, then I will want to kind of like make the effort to make things work. So there is even like a certain belief here of like something fated, and I don't believe, like in faith or like in circumstances that there is anything in one, or anything controlling it. But still, but I did grow up like in a religious environment where there was this notion of like there's being a purpose for everybody, and God being in control. And I think that when you have that type of belief, like it's easier for you to just be like, just to think that things are kind of like, that something will happen. So for example, I think romantic relationships is a good example, because if you're religious, you believe that God, your deity, whatever, like that they have separated somebody for you. And so like I basically guess like I don't believe in anything, but a part of me still believing that there's something like that, not romantic, but like just platonic, because I think I want to explore friendships. I'm more open to having relationships. I'm more active in the relationships that I'm a part of. So that is I've come a long way, basically. Like that is 5 years ago this was kind of like unfathomable, and right now it's just like my reality. I'm looking out for people and situations to interact with people. So that's crazy. Like that is so unlike me. That's the thing. Like that is so unlike the person I've been for like the past 15 years. But it was the person who I was before. My parents, they talk to me about this all the time. How I was always very outgoing, and I was interacting with people, and I wasn't shy. I was just really, confident and comfortable in myself. Until like this happened. So 28 now. So that happened when I was 13. So 15. Oh fuck, 15 years. It's going to be, it was around July. So in July it's going to be 15 years. And it's kind of crazy because I feel that of like this 15 years, 2/3 of it, like I was, I was kind of stuck, as I said. The past 5 years, like I've been started to, improve, to, do better with things. But yeah, it took me years. This is something I also think about sometimes, because this therapy that I did is called EMDR, and basically it is, as I said, it's for traumas, and apparently like it's kind of like a short-term thing. So like in a few sessions you'll be able to process it, but like it took me like a year for me to be able to process it. So like I don't know what that says about me, but it is quite something. I think it just shows how harsh I was, and how like I really buried down everything was. There were too many fucking layers of like me, just bullshitting, not bullshitting, but like creating distance between myself and the world, like I'm talking about people, I'm talking about institutions, organizations, ideas, ideologies, like possibilities. And I kind of like ended up really, I ended up shooting my own foot, basically, by kind of like just being so closed off. And that is something that I can take back. But I'm not thinking about the past, as I said. I'm thinking about the future. So like I'm free now. What am I gonna do? Like what does life have to offer me? How am I going to like take care of things from now on? And as I talked about before, like I don't have certainty in some areas, but I don't have to have it. That's kind of like what I've come to realize. I shouldn't be embarrassed or ashamed that I don't really have like a concrete action plan, or that I don't have like an end goal, because sometimes I do have an action plan. For example, I'm going to start this new major, in a new college, and I'm going to try and find a job in the area. So this is going to be a new direction for me to go to, and so like I have a plan of what is going to happen, but maybe it's not going to happen as I'm planning it. Maybe I'm going to realize this is not the thing. But like everything that you do, like there's always an opportunity. So I feel like even if I realize that the major I'm changing to, like it isn't really for me, I'm still going to like gain something from trying. I'm gonna acquire knowledge, I'm gonna meet people, I'm going to at least like cross something from my list of like things that I can possibly do. And also like you can get ideas, like you can get ideas just by being there. So you realize maybe this is not for me, but this other thing it could be. So there's that. But yeah, so in general, I really I kind of like yesterday, like as I said, like we had this meeting, and I think that some of the things that were said made me reflect on my life, and it made me realize that I've come a long way, and that like things are only getting better from here because I'm no longer stuck. So all the areas of my life in which I have been stuck, I'll be able to kind of like do something, about it. I'm going to try things. So yeah, it's okay for me not to know how the story ends. The journeys are important, which is something that applies also to like my writing, because I know how this book three is going to end, and I know like how book four is going to start, and I know what I want to accomplish. I know a lot of the facts, the things that are going to happen, in book four, but like the end is still kind of like up in the air because I have to decide just like what type of effect these actions are going to have. I generally know like how I want the characters to be at the end of like the novel. I'm talking about like emotionally and physically, but there is still like a lot of questions. They're kind of like open ended, and some things are kind of like already set because I've already started writing. Like the other novel that happens like a decade after this one. So some things I already know that some things are going to happen. But like I think it's a matter of the degree to which things are going to happen. So like things are going to occur, and those things, like what the impact that they're going to have, like what's going to be the reaction, like the response to that. So those are like the details that I'm still kind of like figuring out. But that being said, I'm just really happy with like the whole thing of like just me being able to write. Like that is very healing for me because as I said, like it's very fulfilling. To have yeah, writing for me is very fulfilling. It's something that makes me feel good about myself, about the world, about my place in the world, and it's I don't know, maybe like this is kind of like far-fetched, but it just really improves my life, my well-being, so significantly. I'm just really grateful. Oh yeah, I think I talked about this before about gratitude and how I've been, like trying to be more grateful. Not be more grateful, but like express my gratitude more. And I think I'm succeeding so far. I think that things are happening, and I'm like in my head, like, thank you. As I said, like, I don't really believe in things, so I'm not really saying specifically to anybody, but I do think that there is like a positive effect on you, on your psyche, when you kind of like, you're being happy about things, like you're being grateful. It kind of like balances things out because it's very easy to kind of like forget the good things when you're in the middle of something bad. But ultimately, like it helps with when you're feeling bad about something. You're just looking at all the things that you do have, all the things that worked out, and because of my religious background, I already have like the baseline, the guidelines, and like the base of what I have to say, So it's like I'm talking about, for example, my health. The fact that I have a roof over my head, the fact that I know we have food and food is never lacking here, just there are more things like, and then you can start going to specifics. For example, like there are three bathrooms in this house. I know there's one in my brother's room and one in my parents' room, and then there's one that is kind of like mine. And because like the other day we were talking about the other day, it's been some months. Like this girl who was selling, some art because she wanted a bathroom for herself, because she didn't have a bathroom, like, inside the house. It was only outside. So, it's type of thing that is like, okay, I'm really glad that my bathroom is right there. I don't have to go outside, like the plumbing works, I'm glad, for example, that I have a computer. For example, back in the day we didn't have computers, so like writing was, because I don't write linearly, like I keep going back and forth. So like I think about it, like when I was, if I had been a writer in the 1800s, like how would I, it'd be fucking mess. It'd be really hard. It'd be hard to kind of like do things. If I had like a typewriter or something like that. Yeah. So I can type. I don't have to write by hand. So like, just a lot of things that basically what I'm saying is that like you can look around and you can be grateful for everything that you have here. The fact that I have clothes, that they cover me. I have like jackets, and I have clothes for the winter. I have clothes for the summer. I have all around. And it's not like I have clothes. Like I have clothes that I like. I have my own sense of style, and I can afford to like buy things that go with me. That kind of like that match what I want. So yeah, that is kind of like the power of being grateful. It just improves your overall mood, And I think it just makes you a better person overall. Being appreciative of things, and it's important. It's important to appreciate things in people. Going back to the whole accommodate for people, like serving is something that I grew up Christian, so there's always been this emphasis on serving, and that was always something that I struggled with because I didn't want to serve. One of like my favorite quotes that quote that completely changed my mind from Paradise Lost is when I heard that that one is better. It's the most famous quote. It's better to reign in hell than serve in heaven. Like that quote changed my life. Like no joke. It's not even exaggeration. It just pretty much it expressed like something that I was feeling, because like there's this emphasis when you're in religion. What's going to happen after you die. Nothing's gonna happen after you die, but like if you believe something happens, like you can coexist. But that is something that so I think for me hell is not so much like actual hell, is more like here, life on earth. And there was these feelings that I used to have when I was younger. Like I would rather like be successful here, on earth, than necessarily go to heaven and be successful there. So just like small things that I started to kind of like notice about myself, and I realized that the whole serving, going back to the whole weakness thing, that I didn't want to be perceived as weak, and for me serving was weakness at that point in time. So what I'm trying to say is that right now I no longer see it that way. It can be an expression of care. It can be an expression of gratitude, gratefulness. It can be an expression of love. It can mean so many different things, and it doesn't make you weak to serve people. That's just part of life. And as I said, now that I want to interact more, and I want to have like deeper connections with people. I want to find my people wherever they are, and I want to connect with them. And for that, like this is a part of like that relationship, that dynamic. You serve each other, like because you love each other. Yeah, I think I'm gonna wrap this up right now. But really happy. I'm happy about my situation in life, but I'm also happy with everything that I put out there. I think this is going to lead to even more, introspective moments for me. I'm going to come even more conclusions. But for today, that's enough. Bye.